non-life. Welcome to Forfellingness Belly Snake Illumination from the ancestors, guiding your path today.
Every day, someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiancé, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great-grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them.
Good morgen, and happy Wotan's Day to you. Today we celebrate the Norse god Wotan, or as he was later known, Óðinn. I want to talk today about how we can integrate our knowledge of our quest for experiences and lives and all of the things that come with it into manifesting the reality that we want to experience. Before we get started today, I want to say thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed. And if you haven't had the opportunity yet, now is a great time. Go ahead and click that button. However, whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether it be the audio channels or the video channels, whatever it may be. All right. So make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and certainly on TikTok for sure. We want to make sure that we bring together a large group of people who can help us to promote a message of a better mental space, better mental health, just in general. I want to give a huge shout out, as always, to my friends and family at New Reality TV. newrealitytv.com is the ultimate collection. A pretty darn good collection of different perspectives, different spiritual perspectives that can hopefully resonate within us and help us to provide our path and our trajectory through this physical lifetime. So check them out as well. If you do have any questions, anything about me that you want to know about, including my life coaching services, check out my website, norsewhispers.com. Today we're talking, as I mentioned, we're talking about wisdom. Wisdom, what is it? Well, wisdom, of course, is the combination of knowledge and experience. Put those two together and you get this kind of overview level of knowledge, or next level we call wisdom. Well, wisdom also has another function. Wisdom also provides imagination. From wisdom, we can gain different perspectives and we can see a much bigger picture. So it helps us to promote our imagination. Imagination is necessary for our fight or flight syndrome that we all possess. So as we see things and as we experience things and we process them into our brain kind of is predisposed to a certain perspective of things. As an example, if we were to be, if we had wisdom of crime committed in the dark, that crimes of opportunity and whatnot, when we found ourselves in a situation when we were in the dark, alone, our imagination would do much more in our mental processing, amping up our physical form as it readies itself for its fight or flight response, whatever that looks like. So if we're going to fight, we're going to amp that up, we're going to get our muscles tense, we're going to be ready to go. If we're going to flight, same thing. So we've got it in our head that this is what we're going to do, and so we're predisposing ourselves to that action, whatever that action that we've decided is. So that's kind of what imagination does. Now, imagination, again, is just another arm, another branch of these interrelationships that are created within the mind. Interrelationships between what we know, our intellect, what we feel, our emotional states, and what we can visualize. Many of our experiences, most of our experiences, will contain some form of imagery, and both from the physical realm and the spiritual realm. So as we dream at night, some of our experiences that we have during our dreams, some of these dreams will be stored in our memories that we may or may not have direct access to. Right? So we accomplish some form of experience. We put it in memory from our spiritual side. Don't remember the dream, don't remember the ins and outs of it. But then something happens in our physical experience, and our reaction kind of takes us off guard, well, where did that come from? Well, that's one of these experiences kind of filtering through, right? So it was connected. It, again, had all the relationships. And then it took a physical experience to kind of fire off that connection. Some of them may be very emotional. Some of this imagery may have a lot of emotional energy tied to it. Therefore, we get to words like triggered or activated. And this is when simply we have a physical experience, and as the brain, the imagination, remember the imagination is going to feed into this, and we're going to process it through our normal thought process into our memories, ultimately arriving in our memories, which is going to drive imagination, which is going to kind of become a vicious circle. But nonetheless, we may get this energy that comes forward that it's like, whoa, we got to get out of here. We got to do something else. We got to get away from this, whatever. So the key really to understanding how we interpret our reality is to understand kind of what this wisdom is going to bring forward. We've spoken about many parts along our thought process. Along our sensory input processing, where essentially we take the experience brought in by our eyes or ears or nose or mouth or skin, and we process it through, well, immediately it's going to be merged with imagination energy that we're imagining is coming in. So remember, we're trying to predict what's going to happen. So we're sending this imagination feeds in with the sensory input then feeds into this thing called the mood ring. We've spoken about this many times. Mood ring is simply that. It's just simply a ring around all the sensory input, and that mood ring is set by us. It's what kind of mood are you in? If you're in a good mood, the mood ring is going to represent that, and it's going to provide energy to that experience that we just had. So if we're in a good mood, experience comes in, this energy from the ring is going to be added now to the energy that we just translated, because our sensory inputs now have translated a physical thing into an electronic current that's going to pass over your optic nerve or what other nerve connections we have to the mood ring. Mood ring's going to set it one way or another. It'll drop into the well of the self. The well of the self, of course, is our values, our virtues, our belief systems, all going to process, add energy to this experience, going down to the bottom. At the bottom of the well, then it's converted into biochemistry. This is where the actual physiological part of you really gets involved, is that it's going to create a chemical representation of what it thinks that emotional state was at the bottom of the well. So it creates that in a biochemical composition, right? So it kind of puts that all together using hormones and other chemicals that you make within your body. That'll be released into the bloodstream. Bloodstream will kind of filter up, eventually winding up in the brain. This brain, when we receive it, my ancestors referred to it as the horn of feeling. The horn of feeling is where that biochemistry is now converted back into bioenergy or bioelectricity. That bioelectricity has a certain amount that it can expand as it's creating the energy, or as it's reconverting to energy. And should it spill over, it spills over the edges. Firstly and foremost, we're going to find ourselves very hard to think our way through this. But more importantly, at that point, it now comes out into the rest of the brain that doesn't understand, can't process this energy, and therefore is going to just fire off whatever it's in charge of. This is where we see physiological symptoms of stress or of emotional distress. We're going to see ranging in things from, tremors or sweats or rapid heart rate or anxiety and panic attacks, all the way to crying. Excessive crying, anger outbursts, all of these things is when the emotional energy comes out of that cup and spills onto the rest of the brain. Now, for the chemistry that's actually converted in the horn of feeling, it's actually then piped to this thing called the me gate. The me gate is our kind of last bastion, if you will, of defense, and it gives us the opportunity to deny emotional energy that's coming through. So emotional energy says, I need to be angry. And we say, no, we don't want to be angry. We're going to collect ourselves. We're going to think this through. So our me gate kind of allows us that last bastion of just saying, no, I want to be happy. Before the energies are actually passed into the memory of the brain tissue that's in charge of memories. Now, when the experience makes it into our memories, remember, now we have a sharing going on, right? So our physical brain up here, and our physical brain has processed all of this sensory input. So our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, skin, all of that is coming in to the physical brain, or sensory brain. Okay, it's going to go through its filters and ultimately wind up in memories. At the same time, we have a spiritual brain, and the spiritual brain does a very similar thing. It doesn't use sensory input, obviously, other than to say, in many cases, it's connected to what many refer to as our third eye. Our third eye is simply that. It's simply another eye that's accepting sensory input in much the same way as your physical eyes do, except in the third eye, there's no real imagery being converted, right? So it's not technically seeing anything, although it is being passed emotional energy. The third eye is kind of our focal point for imagination. So your third eye is where imagination kind of comes from our memories into our sensory processing. Okay, so it's right there. The third eye's job, if you will, is to provide the imagery associated with our memory. So as we're pulling that wisdom or that imagination forward, that forward pull comes through our third eye, right? And then all of these are processed at the same time as sensory input. Now, spiritual energy comes in other forms as well. It doesn't require sensory input. It can come in, we're like a radio antenna. We're just receiving all the broadcasts from all around us all the time. Now, a lot of different energies are going to come into our spiritual consciousness or our spiritual processing. throughout the day. And this is where we get into what many of us recommend, or recognize, I should say, as mood swings. And mood swings can be simply that, is that we received some form of energy that contradicted with what we already had going on. And so that, remember, when that sensory input came through, dropped into memories, now that memory is feeding our imagination. Our imagination now picks up this idea that, hey, things aren't right. And it starts processing accordingly and adjusting the inbound sensory input to match that energy. Remember, the mood ring is going to actually manipulate your sensory input to match its energy. So if you're in a bad mood, as an example, and you're witnessing a beautiful field of flowers, what you're going to note is that it's just another field I got to cross. It's just another, 1,000, 2,000 steps that I have to make to get to where I want to go. However, when we change our perspective, and we can do that, we change our perspective, we see the beauty in the flowers. And what a gift it is to walk those 1,000 steps that we got to make anyway, and be surrounded by this beauty. Simple perspective change. Same event, same experience, different perspective. So this is really the idea of the me gate. This is where me gates, all of us have them, are really, really, really cool, because they give us the opportunity, if we're willing, that's the big piece, if we're willing to open and close that gate, ergo changing our perspective, looking at things that could be conceived as negatives, viewing the positives within them. Whenever I'm speaking about energy and looking at the same event with a different perspective, immediately it comes to mind a little self-reveal. When I came home from the military years ago, my father, 45 days after I returned home from the military, my father passed from his physical form. And so when that happened, of course, there was much emotion, just the emotional gamut, if you will. But one thing I remember, and I've refreshed back on, and I've spoken with the spirits about, and certainly my ancestors, is we've spoken about the realities that we experienced that day of his funeral. Well, in the morning, we held, he was a prior member, he was a veteran, so he was part of the United States Army. And so in the morning, we provided a funeral service, a somber, sad, depressing, a lot of crying, the whole thing there. And as my ancestors have now explained it, we were mourning the loss of his physical form. We'd no longer have him to hang out with and talk with and be with and joke with and communicate with, right? He was gone from his physical form. However, my father, also being an Irish American, was Irish. And so, in accordance with Irish traditions, I'm not sure where that fits in the traditional stack, but nonetheless, as an Irishman, that evening we went to a wake that one of his very close friends had put on for him, and it was a wake. The wake celebrated a very different perspective of death. Instead of mourning the loss of this physical form, they celebrated the arrival of his spiritual entity into the spiritual realm. So a wake was much more lively. It was more celebratory. There was lots of alcohol. In my father's case, there was lots of alcohol, but there were stories, and I remember being a young man at the time. I was 21 or so, and drinking heavily with all my father's friends. But I remember them retelling stories about the silly things my father did in his physical form. And some of them were goofy as heck. Now, my father was not a goofy person. My father was a very down to business, get it done, hard day work kind of thing. That's how he was. He was very violent. He was very hard. He was very, there was no fuzziness to him at all. There was no joking around. It was all business, 9 to, morning, noon, and night. So for me to hear these stories of my father's goofiness and the things that he did that, obviously away from my purview, was hilarious. And we celebrated his spiritual arrival into the spiritual realm. Same event, my father's passing. Very, very, very different perspectives. Drove very different emotional responses from my physical form. Right? So in the morning we were crying, we were sad, we were retelling stories, it's very somber stories, and trying to, speak well of, his passing and how we'll miss him and this, that, and the other thing. Changing that perspective then allowed me to celebrate my father, whom I can still communicate with every day, and show him what a value we've created here. In my life with my children, my shield maiden, my grandchildren now. I take care of his ex-wife, my mother. And so what a benefit that is. So very different perspectives, and I was able to control that. I was shown how I could control that. Maybe a better way. Okay, we're going to take a real quick break. When we come back from break, I want to talk about how you and I can use this information that we're going to gather from Óðinn every minute of every day to change our perspectives and to actually teach ourselves to actively seek what we want, whatever that is, right? And we're going to kind of provide some real world experiences. So we'll be right back after this quick message, and we'll finish it up.
The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me. It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
All right. Hey, and welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick, staying with us and checking that out. Today we're talking about the wisdom of Óðinn, and we're talking about how this wisdom translates into setting our own perspective of reality. Well, the first thing and foremost is we talked about earlier this week, and that was to set our mood. We're in charge of that. When we wake up each and every morning for that first 90 minutes of the day, it is our job to kind of set our mood. We can do that any way we want. Now, we could mourn the loss of sleep, the loss of comfort, the loss of warmth under those really fuzzy blankets, or we can be excited about the opportunities that may present themselves today. We don't know what the potential is. We really don't. I mean, we have an idea. We're going to go to work. We're going to start, we're going to go to lunch. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But who knows what can really happen? Quantum physics talks about the world of potentiality as a very different thing. So we could really experience almost anything. We don't know. But the opportunity, the potential is there for anything to happen. So it's just simply a perspective change. I can mourn the loss of my bed, comfort, lethargy, whatever you want to mourn there. Or we can decide to search for opportunity. We can be excited about the day. We can, and even if we have a bad experience on the way to work, somebody cuts us off. I have been teaching myself that maybe they're just more in a hurry than I am. They're a little careless or a little self-focused, whatever the case. Does it affect me? No. Unless they hit my car, and in which case we're just going to call the insurance companies and we're going to let the insurance companies figure everything out, right? As long as I don't get hurt, nobody in my car gets hurt. Okay. Yeah, it may have raised my blood pressure a little bit. Ooh, you almost hit my car. But what does that serve? Again, this is that imagination coming forward and trying to predict, right? So we imagined when he got really close that he could have hit our car. When the universe had it all laid out all the time. He was never going to hit our car. If he was, if the universe had determined that, he needed to hit a car, well, then there you go. But he didn't. They didn't. Let's move on with our lives. Let's not hold up in there. Now, again, this comes back to being able to shift our perspective, being willing and able to let go of one dedicated view and let it go to see things a different way, to be able to look at events and experiences that we have in this life from a different view. One of my favorite sayings of my great-grandmother was to always look for the silver lining. And this comes from storms and thunderstorms and lightning storms. And when the storm began to break up, when the storm began to kind of lose its anger, if you will, you began to see the light from behind it start passing around the edges. And this created a silver lining, if you will, around these large thunderclouds. This was searching for the silver lining. You were anticipating the storm passing. You were ready for the time after the storm. This is looking for the silver lining. This is a perspective change. Because I can either look at those thunderclouds and go, oh gosh, there's these thunderclouds and they're big and they're angry and they got a lot of water in them. Or I can look for the silver lining and I can see the hope afterwards. So it's really a matter of perspectives. It's really a matter of how we look at the events and the experiences in our lives to determine really what matters. We talk about experiences. When the experiences come in, they drop into the well of the self. The well of the self is passing those experiences through our values, our virtues, and our belief systems. And when we decide to circumvent that and we say, nope, I'm going to behave this way, I'm going to do this thing because my friends over there say so, we're circumventing our authentic self and we're creating a biochemistry that's not good for us. It's not good because it's going to, this form of biochemistry becomes what my ancestors referred to as silt. And so silt's going to come in and it's going to take up space in our horn of feeling. Therefore, when biochemistry comes in and it's trying to process itself into energy from the biochemistry, it's not going to have enough room. And again, we're going to get to those physiological symptoms that we described earlier, where we have, actual stress or anxiety because our cup is overflowing. Okay, so it's avoiding that silt. We're going to make sure that we're being authentic to who we are. So be proactive. Remember, you're in charge of how you look at things. You can decide if you want to see the silver lining or you want to see the thundercloud. That's up to you. So today, as we embrace Wotan's Day, and we certainly embrace the wisdom of Óðinn, I want you to think about how you see the world. How are you telling yourself the world is? Because that's really what sets up how you do interpret the world. So think about that. All right, my friends, enjoy. Embrace Wotan's Day today. I hope that you will seek out experiences and emotions to help grow your spiritual form and to help grow yourself beyond this physical form one day. I look forward to seeing you tonight when we will be live for Sporksmall, and we'll be out in the community somewhere. I don't remember where we're going to be, but we're going to be out there, and we're going to talk tonight about a question that's been asked by you, the viewers. So be sure, if you've got those questions, check out my website, NorseWhispers.com. There you can submit your questions, and let's make a show about it. If we make a show about it, I'll send you a free shirt. So win-win. All right, my friends, enjoy Wotan's Day. We will see you again this evening. Love and light.
Watching Fulfillingness Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska akoutlaw in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.